Good morning, everyone. Here's the 11 a.m. Tropical Storm Beryl update for Saturday morning. We see what's happening with the storm out there. There's a big cluster of thunderstorms forming right near the center. We would normally be concerned about that as a sign of extreme intensification going on, but the hurricane hunters are in there. They are not finding a well-organized center, and they're not finding stronger winds yet. Still, this is an indication that the atmosphere is getting more and more primed for the system to pull itself together. It still has kind of a broad circulation, which you can make out here, and we'll look at in more detail in a second. Has this band up to the north, which is kind of separated from it. We'll see if this actually turns into one unified storm as we go forward in time. The thinking is that today will be the day for it to slowly get reorganized, and tomorrow will be the day for significant intensification. If that happens, that's still kind of an open question. Looking close up here, we can see it has a well-defined circulation. We also see this line of clouds running out here. You see that? That's showing us that there's a lot of dry air out here. That's the moisture being pushed out into the dry air. But we'll just have to see if this can form something like a core, something like an eye wall. We'll see what happens. That this is the first step, but there are multiple steps that have to take place, and that has to happen before it can intensify. 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm is the estimate as of the 11 a.m. Eastern Time advisory. Then 997 millibar pressure measured by the hurricane hunters that are in there right now. And you notice how it has slowed down, now only 12 miles an hour. I'm talking about the idea that it would lose the steering push in the Gulf of Mexico. That is indeed happening. So that's going to give it more time over the warm waters of the Gulf to organize and intensify as much as it can. But it doesn't have that much time. It really only has tomorrow and the first part of Monday before it comes ashore, depending on where it actually makes landfall. All right, here is the cone as of the 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, new advisory. And what you see is the Hurricane Center has it at 85 miles an hour somewhere in here, kind of near Corpus Christi or a beam of Corpus Christi. The question is, of course, exactly where in the cone is it? Because if it takes this side of the cone so that it comes ashore somewhere near Corpus Christi, that's going to put a lot of water there in the Corpus Christi area, pushing up to 5 feet of storm surge inland. But if it stays farther offshore up here, it'll have more time to intensify. If it gets up there near Port Lavaca, near Victoria, somewhere in there, then it may be a 90-mile-an-hour storm. If it were to stay to this side of the cone up near Metro Houston, then it's perhaps going to be a 95 or 100-mile-an-hour storm. So the forecast is for a Category 1, but then you plan for at least a Category 2. Could it be a Category 3? Yes, it could. It just really depends on how fast it gets organized today. If it has just tomorrow to strengthen, then that's going to limit how strong it can get. If it has a good part of today and tomorrow into Monday to strengthen, then it can get stronger. So everybody in Metro Houston here needs to be ready for a significant storm on beginning Monday and lasting through Monday night into Tuesday before things will move along. You see this Monday PM here. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time there, with the storm in the vicinity of the Houston-San Antonio line, or Galveston-San Antonio line, and moving to the north. So through the night, Monday night, it'll still be affecting the big metro centers there and moving up toward Austin, spreading rain mostly east of I-35, it looks like, but still a significant threat here for Metro Houston and all this populated area here from San Antonio down to Victoria and on up to Austin. So we just want everybody in that area to just be ready for these developments. Tomorrow will be preparation day. You will have all day tomorrow to get organized and decide what you're going to do about this, depending on what we have. But it is indeed coming in your general direction. Here's what the Hurricane Center's analysis is. If the storm goes right up the middle of the cone, the idea is this is where the strongest winds will be, hurricane force sustained winds, and then here is where the hurricane force gusts would be, and then out here the 40-mile-an-hour plus tropical storm force winds. But of course, you have to imagine that if this is if the storm's in the middle of the cone. If the storm were on the right side of the cone here, then this all would be shifted over, so you would get stronger winds up into Houston, Galveston, and of course, as we saw, there is some possibility of even the strongest winds getting up here into Sargent and especially the west side and south side of the Houston metro. So we're just keeping all that in mind, but that's an idea of the size of the storm we're talking about. We're not talking about a Hurricane Carla or something here. We're talking about a much more confined, or an Ike. We're talking about a much smaller storm that won't produce those giant storm surges, but there still is a storm surge watch in effect. But there's also a hurricane watch in effect. We'll talk about the storm surge watch in a second. The hurricane watch goes up right now. Hurricane watch meaning hurricane conditions are possible all the way as far north here as the south end of Galveston Island, and then all the way down to Mexico. So hurricane watch is possibility of hurricane force winds in that entire area. From about Corpus on down, they have a tropical storm warning in effect already. That's just because of timing, saying, expect tropical storm force winds, be ready for hurricane force winds. That's what these two things working together are saying. And the National Weather Service, you notice inland here, the yellow has issued a tropical storm watch. A tropical storm watch means a possibility of tropical storm force winds inland. So hurricane watch at the coast, possibility of hurricane winds there, tropical storm watch inland, possibility of tropical storm winds there. And then we have the storm surge alerts. And notice the storm surge watch extends farther north. This includes the Bolivar Peninsula all the way up to High Island, and it includes Galveston Bay. So a storm surge watch means the possibility of the Gulf water rising at least 3 feet above the normal high tide. So that's just an at least. So they put up a watch where they think that possibility exists, though this will switch to a warning, and it might get narrowed down a little bit depending on what happens with the forecast track later on today. I think that warning will come out later on this afternoon, or maybe this evening, probably this afternoon, I would think. And here's the storm surge forecast. So the thinking is that in this area where the system is most likely to go, the strongest winds are most likely to be somewhere in here up to 5 feet. And now that includes Corpus Christi, that includes Matagorda Bay, and all the inlets and harbors and so forth, and the beaches all along there, along the islands there, up to 5 feet above normal high tide. Up to. That doesn't mean everywhere. That means somewhere in that area, 5 feet above normal high tide. Up in the northern part here, up around Galveston Bay, up to 4 feet above normal high tide. Again, not everywhere, but planning for up to 4 feet, and up to 4 feet down on the southern, in South Texas, South Padre Island, and so forth, down that way. So significant storm surges. These islands, this would obviously put water into many of these beach communities, over roads, and outside the seawall in Galveston. Obviously, there's a threat of flooding here. So this is a just be ready for it situation. It's not a forecast yet. That more definitively will come out later. All right, what's happening here in terms of the weather pattern? Well, we've had a blocking high to the north, and that's obviously breaking down now as a dip in the jet stream is coming along here. And so what's going to happen is these two high pressure systems here, both of them are kind of heat dome highs. You might have heard about the 124 degrees in Palm Springs yesterday and 106 in Raleigh. So they're super strong high pressure systems. And when When you get that, sometimes you get a real kink, an extra strong kink in the jet stream in between them, and it gets enhanced by the super heat in those highs, and we think that's what's happening, is enhancing that kink, so it's pulling Beryl more north than was originally thought, because the highs are actually producing hotter temperatures. So there's the idea that this dip comes down and makes a gap in the highs, and Beryl moves to the north. The other issue is how intense is the storm going to be. Here we are right now, and you can see the dry air. The brown is the dry air wrapping into it. So the question is whether this is accurate. This is a computer depiction. It looks to me like there's more moisture around the center already than this is showing. But in any case, the idea is, as we go from this afternoon here through tonight and into tomorrow, the moisture wraps around it so that it's in an envelope that it can indeed intensify. There's still plenty of dry air out there. So how the dry air works against the intensification, but the very warm Gulf water works for the intensification. They're kind of battling each other, and that's why exactly how strong this storm is going to be, and then how long it stays over the Gulf before it comes ashore, those are all variables that can't be absolutely pinned down, and why we have the uncertainty that we have with it right now, but that's what we're going to be watching. Okay, so here's where we are, just to give you a close-up look here in terms of timing. This is nominally 8 a.m. Tomorrow. This is nominally 8 p.m. tomorrow, and then Tuesday, 8 a.m. So passing by, or making landfall, passing by Corpus in the morning in terms of the center, but the rain will already have been spreading on Monday morning, I'm talking about, will already have been spreading out north. So expecting once the storm gets here offshore of South Texas, you're going to start having deteriorating weather even in the Houston metro, because remember, this is being stretched north by the jet stream dip. So the weather will start deteriorating tomorrow evening, and then the highest impacts up in Metro Houston won't be until the afternoon hours or so into the evening hours on Monday. So here are what the models are showing as of now. And you see that there's a bunch of them over here, and then this is the European model here. So the consensus, which is normally the best one, is more or less down the middle of the cone, is what the Hurricane Center uses to draw their cone. So somewhere, the consensus says somewhere in the Matagorda Bay area to get the worst of it, on up here in this area just to the right of that. So on up toward Freeport, or on up toward Sargent and so forth, extreme south Metro Houston. But we have seen this move to the right as that dip in the jet stream has gotten stronger. And we'll just see, because it's the strong dip in the jet stream and the strength of the storm and how they work together on where this thing actually goes. Here's what the forecast uncertainty shows us. And notice it shows us significant uncertainty. And indeed, it brings the possibility of coming closer to the Houston metro into account. But the core of all this, the consensus, is down farther south, closer to Matagorda Bay, between Corpus Christi and Matagorda Bay, somewhere in there. But we're just not ruling out at this point. We've seen this progression as those two factors, the dip in the jet stream and the storm itself, are working together to finalize the track. So there's the close-up of where the track is forecast right now. We have the rain that's going to move in with this. So tomorrow you have this flash flood threat, and it starts from south to north, coastal sections, but then Monday being the peak day when the storm comes in. As of right now, with the storm most likely to come into somewhere Corpus, Matagorda Bay area, this is the core of where the flash flood threat is. But notice there is a level 2 flash flood threat that includes Metro Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and even north into part of the Metroplex. So this is going to be Monday, and then Tuesday it all begins to shift on off to the northeast, but it doesn't really clear out in Metro Houston. Lingering moisture is going to keep things going. And we have to the right of where the center comes ashore, it looks like this would be later in the day on Monday, or during the day on Monday sometime, a tornado threat with this. Again, this would be including the Houston metro area for a tornado threat on Monday. So there's a lot going on here, and a lot of it is still subject to change because of the fundamental rule of forecasting these things is if they're disorganized or they're just organizing, the forecast is likely to change. The errors are greater. So expect changes, but stay in touch, and it's time to think about getting prepared here this weekend for the arrival of what we think will be Hurricane Beryl. All right, have a good day, and we'll talk to you later here. And, of course, on Fox Weather.